Good morning, friends. Now we are discussing the experiment dye penetration test in material testing lab. Aim of the experiment is to detect the defects on the surface of the given specimen by penetrate test. Apparatus used are penetrate, developer, and the UV light source. So theory. So here in the liquid penetrate test, so the liquids will be applied to the surface of the given surface and allowed to penetrate. So the liquid applied, that is the penetrate, will be allowed to get penetrate into the surface openings, cracks and porosity. We are using two types of liquid penetrates here, the fluorescent penetrates, so that under ultraviolet light, so the defects will be notified. And the second one is visible penetrate. So using dyes or colors, usually red in the color, which appears as the bright outline. So the crack developed on the surface will be highlighted with the help of this dye, which is applied on the surface of the given specimen. So the test piece will, the given test piece will be coated or it will be soaked in a liquid penetrate and surplus coating, that is the excess coating of the penetrate will be wiped off with the cloth. So the penetrate will seep or percolate into the cracks. So as even if the width of the cracks are as small as 0.1 mm, so the applied penetrate will percolate into the cracks. So and we allow the penetrate to settle. After a short time, so a developing agent will be added to allow the penetrate to seep back to the surface. So the developer added will allow the penetrate so that it will seep back to the surface due to capillary action and spread to the edges of the openings or the cracks. So then the surface will be inspected for the defects present either visually in the case of dye penetrates or will using ultraviolet light for fluorescent penetrate. So the developer used will include dry powders, aqueous liquid and non-aqueous liquid. So that this dye penetration test is capable of detecting a variety of the defects on the surface and it is used extensively. Procedure. So first clean the test piece given on the surface to remove any scales, dirt, oil or grease present so that the effective observation of the cracks present will be done. So then immerse the test piece in the selected penetrate and hold it for some time. Remove the excess penetrate on the test piece surface. Apply the developer on the surface of the test piece. Then examine the surface of the test piece under appropriate viewing conditions. Then clean the surface to prevent the possibility of corrosion. So the crack which is filled with the dirt, so that will be ideally cleaned using the cotton cloth, the clean cotton cloth. So the crack filled with the dirt will be cleaned. Then we are applying the penetrate. So then intermediate cleaning so that the excess penetrate applied will be wiped off. Then we are applying the developer here. So then we are identifying the crack indicated.
Dye-penetrant examination is an important method of non-destructive testing of materials. This is the basic principle. Often the surface of a workpiece is covered with rust or paint, which masks the material defects, as shown in the sectional view. Therefore, the first step is always the pre-cleaning of the test piece surface. This must be done very thoroughly so that any defects present, here it is a crack, are open to the surface. In the second step, the penetrant is applied to the test piece, usually a red-colored low-viscosity oil. Due to the penetrant's high surface wetting capability, it penetrates into the defects and cracks. After several minutes of dwell time, the third step is to rinse the part's surface cautiously with water. The water removes the penetrant completely from the surface, but leaves it in the crack. Now, the fourth step. After drying the test piece, a developer is applied onto the surface. The developer is a fine-grained white powder suspended in a liquid. It forms an even coating on the surface. After drying, it draws penetrant from the crack out onto the surface. The location of the crack is indicated clearly on the surface. And this is how it is carried out in practice. We wish to inspect two samples, a segment of a worm gear shaft and a broken bicycle crank arm. Both test pieces have already been cleaned. First in line is the worm gear shaft. The material tester applies the penetrant. After a dwell time of about 10 minutes, she removes the excess penetrant from the surface by rinsing the test piece gently with water. She takes care not to rinse for an unnecessary long time because the penetrant is supposed to stay in the defects. Now she dries the surface of the sample with a cloth to absorb the excess water. As the final step, she applies the developer and lets it dry. That's it. Several cracks are indicated on the surface in deep red color. Next, the broken bicycle crank arm has to undergo the dye penetration test. Spraying with penetrant, allowing to soak, rinsing, drying, and applying developer. Clearly, additional cracks are indicated on the fragments. Finally, the pros and cons at a glance. Advantages of this test method are: almost all materials can be tested, and the method is simple and low cost for a single inspection. Disadvantages are: only suitable for surface defects. No information about the depth of flaws can be gained, and rough surfaces are difficult to test.
So here the disadvantage is that only the surface defects can be found out, and to what extent or to what depth the cracks are developed, it is not possible to find out. So, and even the rough surfaces, on the rough surfaces the cracks developed, it is difficult to trace. Thank you.